Good morning and welcome. We are here at Ashland University, Ashland Theological Seminary, which is part of Ashland University, and in our podcasting studio with some wonderful guests before us. I have Dr. Yvonne Glass, who is our new dean. She is no longer interim. She is the full-fledged thing, and we are going through a very special event, which you're going to hear about, I think, a little bit. Share a little bit about that?
Sure.
Okay. And then we also have two other guests. I have Pastor Rickey Bolden, who is not pastoring right now. Is that correct? Are you?
No. Well, I'm always pastoring, but not serving in the local.
Okay, there you go. So, and you'll learn more about Pastor Rickey. And then we also have Pastor Fred Miller with us today, too. These are both seasoned men on our board. And Dr. Glass is going to ask a few questions for them. So I give it to Dr. Glass.
I'm super excited. Today we are doing the official investiture where I will become executive dean. I've already been serving in that role officially for a little over 2 months, but I'm very excited for the ceremony. And hopefully many of you will be able to join us this evening. I'm excited for our guests because they are definitely strong pillars, not just in this community, but in the Big C church community. And they are trustees that serve on both the seminary committee and also on the university trustee board. And so they're going to share with us today. I'm going to start with Pastor Fred and ask him to tell him a little bit about himself.
Good morning. Thank you, Yvonne. I've been married to my wife, Pam, for 44 years. We have two boys, David, who is our associate pastor of leadership and spiritual development at our church now. My youngest son, Andrew, is a volunteer with IT at the church, so he helps with all that complicated technology stuff. I have 5 grandchildren, all who inspire me and enough that I write children's books. It's kind of one of my hobbies, and I've written 15 for them to read and enjoy as they grow up. I'm the pastor of the Mount Olive Brethren Church. I've been there for 35 years this July, and God has blessed us greatly there.
That's amazing. I did not know you write children's books. I want to read some. My first question for you is, what made you become a student here at the seminary?
Well, I grew up in the Brethren Church, and every year my pastor, Reverend Thomas Kidder, would bring us to Ashland for annual conference. Oh. So at See the University, I'd get opportunity to come up to the seminary. I would see it. I was acquainted with it. And when I felt the call to go into ministry, I knew one day I wanted to be at Ashland Theological Seminary. And that dream did come true in 1980 when my wife and I moved here. So it's been a part of me since I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And it was a great benefit when conference was here each year to fall in love with this place and the people who are here.
Wow, that's amazing. Since 10 years old, wow, it's a long time. And then what made you decide to come back and serve the seminary and the university as a trustee?
Well, I had the opportunity to graduate with my master's in divinity degree and then later with my doctor of ministry degree. I was a part of the Pastors of Excellence program, so I love coming to Ashland. It's kind of home away from home, having lived here and having served in Pastors of Excellence and gone to school here. So when the invitation was offered to be interviewed to be a trustee, I said, sure, if it'll get me in Ashland, I would be happy to serve as a trustee. And I was welcomed and always look forward to the journey out here, seeing what's going on at the seminary. Love the seminary. It's part of my heart. And any way I can support it, I want to. This was a grand opportunity to do that.
Awesome. So I'm going a bit off script and asking a question. And so Pastor Rickey Bolden will have a little bit of an advantage. But the people that listen to this are students, graduates, alum, trustees, community at large. What is something you would want them to know about the seminary, but also about what you gained while you were here?
Just the experience of meeting the people who lead and serve on the faculty here. They invest in you. They pour their heart into you. They want you to succeed. And they come from a good Brethren background, or at least they learn the Brethren background and ethos, and they embrace that. And it just welcomes someone like me who grew up Brethren. And anybody who comes here is quickly going to learn that we're about community. We're about the Bible. We're about how do we honor the name of Jesus with the call that we have, whether it be in pastoral ministry or counseling or whatever direction God might lead them. This place helps you to discern the call, confirm the call, and then carry out the call.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
I'm happy to be here and support the seminary and say if you have any opportunity to attend classes either online or here, take that step, dip your toes in. I think you'll take the plunge.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Pastor Rickey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and large family. It was 10 of us.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of violence in our family. You know, my father died when I was 11. My brother Charles attempted suicide when I was 13. Then I got shot. My brother Wallace went to prison and got out and got murdered. And then I've even been shot. And so grew up in a lot of violence. And one of the areas in which I chose to get out of the city was through sports. And so I started playing football and became pretty good at it. And went to a small college in Dallas, stayed right there at home, Southern Methodist University, and just had real good football teams there. We were in the top 5 in the nation for 3 of the 4 years I was there. And I was just shocked when I was drafted. I remember I went to the NFL Combine in 1984, and guy Joe Daniels walked up to me and he said, "Man, you know, we really want to draft you." And I always wanted to play for the Cowboys growing up in Dallas. And I said, you know, wouldn't it be nice to go to high school in Dallas, college, now playing the NFL? And Joe Daniels, he was really interested in me. And so I just remember on draft day when I got that call from Sam Ritigliano saying, "Rick, would you like to play for the Browns?" And so I came here. And I played here for 6 years, got married right in the middle of that. My wife, Glenda, she's been my queen. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and we've been married for 36 years now. And so I started attending the seminary while I was playing.
Okay.
And I just had such a great time here. And so when I retired after going into my 7th season, I drove straight to the seminary and enrolled and started full time.
Oh, wow.
After after 3 years, I graduated, went to Washington, D.C., and I stayed there and I pastored until 2005. Then I went to Georgia and pastored there for 8 years. And my brothers in Washington, D.C. invited me to come back. And so I went back to D.C. and I've just been doing ministry ever since.
Okay, awesome. That is an interesting story. Being here, you can't be at the seminary and not know that we have a former Cleveland Browns player as an alum. And then growing up in this area with both a father and a father-in-law and now a husband and son that are huge Browns fans.
Oh, wow.
You can't not know that. So I'm like, oh, okay. I get to. So I actually told them, I'm like, you're going to get to meet Rickey Bolden. So excited to have you here. What made you decide that you wanted to become a trustee?
You know, a lot of things. Even back when I had never heard of Ashland Seminary, but the chaplain led me to the Lord. The chaplain of the Browns, Tom Petersburg, led me to the Lord my very first year in Cleveland, and so I started just really studying the Word with Tom. But after a couple of years, it started getting kind of boring, and I said, "Tom, I think I need a little bit more." And so Tom was attending seminary here.
Oh.
He was a chaplain, and he said, "Yeah, I'm going to seminary. Why don't you go back and get your bachelor's and stuff? We go to school together." And so I did, and I took a class in Cleveland, and it was just phenomenal. And then I was introduced to a guy by the name of Bill Myers. He was over the Black Church Studies program. And it was just, I started learning so much. It was just amazing. And And so after I finished up here, I went to D.C. and just ready to go out and pastor. But it was just Tom Petersburg's influence on me to start here at the seminary.
So then what makes you want to be a trustee?
Yeah, right. And so I just think it is so important. I have so many friends in Washington, D.C., and that's where I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I go a couple of times a week, and I go on the Hill, and I work with leaders, and we have Bible studies, and just really have a good time. And so when they asked me, I had a buddy that I'm walking with, and he owns a Chick-fil-A, and he came there, and we befriended one another, and we're now best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see the hunger for the Word. And I said, what if we can raise up a generation of young men that just won't go to church and do church the same way, but what if we can raise up a generation of young men that will be interested in higher education? So I've always been interested, specifically in the African-American community, of young men going and really reaching and thriving for higher education.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what really motivated me to be a trustee. Stephen Cole, he called me one day and he said, "Would you ever consider it?"
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, "Man, that would really be a privilege." And so I've been here, I think I'm going on 3 years now.
Okay. Awesome. And then if you could tell the people about Ashland, what would you want them to know?
Yeah, Ashland for me is a safe haven.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy coming here. A lot of the professors are my friends. Last night I was with a guy by the name of David Baker, and he taught me Old Testament. And it was just he and his wife. We just stood and talked. But that's what I would probably say I walked away with. I walked away with great relationships.
Mm-hmm.
People who love the Lord, but more importantly, they loved you. And I felt loved my entire time here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a gift to me, those relationships. Growing up in the inner city, we didn't have close relationships in my family, we didn't have a lot of close relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So coming here, you met people who were old enough to be your father, and so they could literally step into that role.
Right.
But you had other great brothers and sisters that you could walk with and have fun with. And so it's the relationships that really drew me here to the seminary.
Awesome. And anything you would want anyone to know?
Yeah, you know what? I just, if someone really desires to grow, the one thing that I love about the seminary today is that they meet practical needs.
Mm-hmm.
Needs like, hey, if a person is in prison, there's ministry in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Or if a person if a person is interested in drug counseling, they will meet the needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's been beautiful about Ashland is they've been morphing into this new university. It's not the same university that I attended in the 80s or the 90s, but they've morphed into this beautiful thing that really wants to impact people right where they are, and as well as empower leaders to impact the world right where they are.
Yeah. So your closing question, also impromptu, so I apologize in advance, is one of the things that I've heard, especially in the last few months, is that people talk about their time here at the seminary in the 80s and the 90s and even the early 2000s. And I would hear it from the counseling alum as well, that the time that they spent here in small Ashland, Ohio, really transformed them. And education overall, but especially theological education, is moving away from that in-person attribute of education where everyone's like, well, I'm too busy. I need to go out. I need to do it online, those kinds of things. And even as we are trying to help them see, like, the in-person really does matter. What would you tell someone that is contemplating pursuing theological education and says, well, I could just do that online? What would you tell them is the distinctive of being in person?
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember when I was here, I drove an hour and 30 minutes every week just to come here. And the moments here, just even if it's just sitting down with the other students, whether it be in the library, whether it be in the student center, just to have conversations and to struggle together through classes, it's just something special that I don't think that we always get online.
Right.
And so I just believe this intimacy that we have here at this seminary in person.
Mhm.
There's no other place you can get it from. Now, you can get education. You can get a tremendous amount of knowledge online.
Mhm.
And I do think people need knowledge, but it's the intimacy and it's going deep in the relationships. I have friends that I met here that I still talk to on a regular basis.
Mhm.
And even if I don't see them for a while, and I go back and I see them, there's just this connection. And I remember last year when I came back, and I hadn't seen Professor Jody Watson in a long time.
Mhm.
But when I saw her, I just ran up and I hugged her because she gave so much to me. She encouraged me.
Mhm.
And so this personal relationship that you develop one-on-one, you just can't beat.
I agree.
Yeah, there was a relationship and there was the support. When my wife and I moved from Penn State University to Ashland, we had booked a place to rent. And when we arrived here, someone else was looking at the apartment.
Oh no.
And we said, our U-Haul is here.
Right.
We're ready to move in. What's going on? And she said, well, I haven't heard from you for the last 2 weeks. I said, I told you we wanted it. Well, the other lady goes in, looks at it. She wants it.
Oh no.
That night we had no place to stay. There's a little hotel that cost $15 a night at that time, which was about all the money we had left. And we spent the night there just praying away. The next morning, I come up to see Virgil Meyer, who was working in the office there. And I told him the situation, and I just remembered he said, oh.
Oh no.
But there was a gentleman who just graduated standing in the hallway by the name of Mark Baker. And he poked his head in and he said, I just moved out of an apartment. You might want to check on it. So I called Mrs. Botdorf up. She came that day. We looked at it and we said, we'll take it. She said, when do you want to move in? We said, right now. We said, oh. And she let us move in that day. And so we got that support. And then, about a year later, finances were really tight, and we didn't have the money for rent for that month. And we had some close friends who must have heard us talk about it. And the next day, I came down to our mailbox, which was outside of the apartment, and there was an envelope in there with $101 bills in it. I don't know to this day who put it in there.
Oh, wow.
I suspect some friends, but that was seminary community.
Right.
And somehow they came together and anonymously put that in there and got us through that month. So that's the kind of support you get here. Any need you have, there are going to be people who swarm to you and say, we want to be there for you. And that's relationship.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. We, you may recall we had a cohort in Columbus, and when I started, I would spend 1 day a week here and then 1 day a week down in Columbus. And there were students that needed to take a class here on the seminary campus. And so they had come up to take that class, but I didn't know that they were going to take the class. And I walked out to the fireplace out there and I saw them sitting, and I said, I didn't recognize them. They're like, oh, Dr. Glass, Dr. Glass. Like, I thought these were just random people. And they looked different, right, than they did when they were down in the building where we had campus or had class before. Because I feel like there's a presence here on campus that people, they don't know how to put it into words. They don't know how to articulate it. And when I hear the two of you talk, that's a piece of what I'm getting. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on that and how it's carried you all these years.
Yeah, for me, Jody Watson was one of my favorites. And this woman loved me like no one loved me before. And the way she poured into me and built me up. Now, remember, I'm from the inner city. And there was not a lot of building up when I was growing up. But just, the Lord just really drew me to Jody. And she doesn't realize every word she spoke. I was sitting on the edge of my seat, just wanting to hear from her. But it's this building up. It's this unconditional love that they have for you here that really blessed my life and blessed my heart and blessed my family. because I was able to go home and talk to my wife about it. And, she's like, wow, this is amazing, because she grew up in the same inner city.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that it's this unconditional love. It is this valuing and giving you value while you're here that really blessed me.
Dr. Fred Finks was the president at that time, and he walked amongst us.
Mm-hmm.
And he would befriend you. And our relationship went far beyond my time here at the seminary. My first missionary trip was in 2004. Up to that point, I thought missions is for missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pastor. But he convinced my wife and I to go to Argentina to help build a counseling building for the seminary that we had in Argentina. That was my first experience, and he was the one years later who encouraged me to get involved in missions. And I've been involved in missions pretty much every year since then. But he planted that seed. So even once you graduate, there's a connection that is there where they want to continue to invest in you. Being at seminary, I think one of my most delightful moments was a New Testament class with Dr. Jerry Flora, when he would pray. I've never been around anyone where I thought, please don't stop praying.
Wow.
He would pray and you would be like, oh, please keep praying. I want to hear more. It was beautiful. It encouraged you to develop that kind of communication with God.
Right. The last thing that in our last final minutes, as you know, because I've told you all, I'm a born and bred church girl, and so one of the byproducts of that is that I love to hear pastors give just wisdom, because I feel like not all pastors, but certain ones have a way of just speaking that speaks life. And so I just ask for each of you to take a moment and speak life to those that are listening, that will help them see and hear not just what the seminary has done for you in that season, but what God did through the seminary for you.
Well, if you're going to feed others, you got to feed yourself.
That's right.
And if you do that, the passion will show. I have a nephew who's just starting to go into ministry. And he said, any advice for me when it comes to preaching? And what I will share with him when I get that opportunity is make sure you're passionate about it. If you're working on a message, make sure it's speaking to you so that you can speak passionately, so that they who hear you can develop that passion too. It's not just a sermon.
Right.
It's a message that God has spoken to you and then through you. Passion is so important.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would probably say I've been married for 36 years, and Linda and I, we've gone through a lot of stuff. But the one principle that I would say that we have applied, not just to ourselves, but to everyone, is that unconditional love can never be unconditional love until there is a condition. And so we would get into a big fight, and I was like, well, I'm getting out of here. And she was like, oh, here comes the condition. Can you stay here through the condition? And we've hung in here through great times, but also through challenging times. Because of that once an unconditional love. You can never tell if a person will love you unconditionally until there's a condition. And so whether it be divorce, there's the condition. Whether it be an affair, there's the condition. Whether it be a child that goes out to a liberal college and come back and say, hey, I'm attracted to the same sex, or I'm in the LGBT community, there's your condition. Unconditional love can never be unconditional love until there's a condition. And so for me, I keep asking myself, how do I love people better even when there's a condition? If they're homeless, that's the condition. How do I love them better? If they're hooked on drugs, there's a condition. How do I love them anyway? And that's the way I see the model of Jesus. Is that when the woman was caught in adultery, well, there was the condition, and it was difficult for people to love her. And then suddenly Jesus steps in and he loves her unconditionally. And she felt it. I can't even imagine just how that woman felt. But how do I love everyone when there's a condition?
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you both so much for sharing with us today, for taking the time. I know I really appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. If you ever have any questions or want to know how to get plugged into the seminary, please feel free to email Rachel Pierce. That's RPIERCE6 @ashland.edu. I hope you all have a blessed day. Thank you.